do you think XRP wasn't specifically named in the executive order for the digital asset stockpile?
Well, so XRP was named by the president on Truth Social. He posted something saying that there should be other tokens, that there's going to be a Bitcoin strategic reserve and then a crypto stockpile that would include things like XRP.
Days later, the executive order didn't include it. Why was that?
I don't know what specifically was in the executive order. My understanding is there's going to be a Bitcoin strategic reserve. There'll be a crypto stockpile representing other cryptos. And I would expect that will include XRP. Look, at the end of the day, I think the stark contrast is in the Biden administration, we couldn't get a meeting with people at the White House. Now we're welcomed into the White House, and that's just a massive change. I think we want this industry to thrive in the United States. We don't want to push it offshore where you have fewer regulations.
I think the reason I keep pushing you too is because I think now it's widely accepted that this is a pro-crypto administration, but the details, that is what's causing an overhang, the uncertainty of the details. So to the extent you have confidence, right, about XRP being in that stockpile or otherwise getting more support for an ETF, for example, where does that confidence come from and what kind of timeline do you see it happening on?
So I have immense confidence on the ETF. I think there's 11 different filings pending with the SEC to launch ETFs, from everybody from Bitwise to Franklin Templeton and a whole bunch of people in between. I think those will be live in the second half of this year. We have seen, even outside the United States, you have live ETPs. And at a time when a lot of outflows are exiting some of the crypto ETFs, you're seeing inflows into XRP. And I think that's because you had this false negative pressure from the SEC, this kind of an exogenous hand holding things down that's now being released. And that's great for the market. That's great for builders within the XRP ecosystem globally.
How much XRP would be in it? Where does it come from?
Well, my understanding of what I read about I think there are some questions, and that the devil may be in the details as Treasury implements some of this.
Absolutely in the details.
But my understanding is that the stockpile will be represented by seized other cryptos other than Bitcoin that then will be in that stockpile. So to the extent that various law enforcement agencies have seized cryptos, which would include XRP, that those would go into the stockpile in addition to the Bitcoin strategic reserve. That's my understanding.
Forefront of stablecoins, now that the U.S. is getting toward clarity, what's possible?
Well, I think we're underestimating how big that might get. Today that market's about $230 billion. So I think some smart people think that may go up 10x in the next 5 years. I think that's probably right. I mean, the two leading players in Tether as well as USDC are both, I think, poised to do well in that market. Ripple launched our own stablecoin at the end of last year. That's already ahead of our own internal forecasts in terms of where we are at this point in the year. Still, we're small, but the goal is by the end of the year for RLUSD, Ripple's stablecoin, to be one of the top 5 in the market by the end of the year. And I think the whole market's going to grow dramatically over this year. Well, it's certainly something that is possible. The United States SEC under Gensler was so hostile to this industry. I mean, ironically, they approved the S1 from Coinbase and then sued them for doing the things they said they were doing. So this SEC, fortunately, is going to be, I think, very constructive and positive for this industry. So I think that's available. And I think the company's at a stage where we could consider that. That being said, it isn't a huge priority. I think most companies are going public. Raising capital is something that is high on their radar. We have been in a very fortunate position to be able to grow the business organically. We're also, frankly, more proactive in looking at acquisitions. This is an industry that finally is going to be able to thrive in the United States, the largest economy in the world. And I think the industry is still underestimating the shift from the headwinds to the tailwinds. That's going to make a bigger difference than people think. And finally, the U.S. market is really unlocked.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And I come back with that video just to make you think.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
And make sure you join the Patrons. If you're not a part of the Patrons, make sure you're hitting the Cash App. And also, guys, make sure you go like and follow the TikTok. More videos to come. And we had a very entertaining day yesterday. And then also some powerful things were said yesterday that a lot of people didn't get to see. And then also those who did see it, it will go right over their head. But we had Brad Garlinghouse asked about the stockpile executive order. Now, guys, the executive order clearly states cryptocurrencies. It wasn't specific about any crypto. It stated seize crypto, and it's not like she couldn't read that. And then, of course, Brad talks about stable coins, and we know stable coins are the foundation, and that's the reason why Ripple created its own stable coin. But the thing about Ripple is that Ripple has the protocol to move the stable coin. A lot of these companies have either the stable coin or they have the protocol, like XLM. XLM has a protocol, but they don't have the stable coin. Ripple has both. And like I told you, that makes them a bank. And then on top of it, they have custody. They have a CBDC platform. They have the complete package on being a bank. And he's asked about the IPO, and he says, yes, that could happen. But like I told you a long time ago, I don't see Ripple having an IPO. And don't forget, 95% of their business is overseas. And remember, the crypto teacher told you.
Certainty for Ripple, for frankly me personally, because the SEC had sued me. The SEC has abandoned their appeal. And so they filed suit in December of 2020. We won on the key parts of the case in the summer of 23. Judge Torres made a ruling that XRP in and of itself was not a security. That's almost a verbatim quote. The SEC filed an appeal about 8 months ago, and what they've now agreed is that they're going to drop that appeal. We still have a cross appeal pending, and so we go from being defendant really to plaintiff. So we now are in the driver's seat to determine how we want to proceed.
Are you dropping it?
We're going to see. It feels a lot better to be on the offense than the defense. You know, 4 years, we spent over $150 million defending that case. Not just for Ripple, but for the whole industry. I think it was really important that this SEC, the Gensler SEC, was really trying to bully and continue lawfare, filing lawsuits and lawsuits and lawsuits against crypto companies. That's over now, and I think that's great for the U.S. crypto industry and, frankly, great for crypto at large. Well, that certainly is an option. I mean, again, it's clear the SEC has said, I think in retrospect, never would have brought this case. The judge did rule in certain instances back in 2015 and 2016, some XRP sales that we sold to accredited investors, to institutions, that those had constituted a security. And so there was a $125 million fine that's sitting in escrow. We wouldn't mind having that back. That's on the table. And I think there's some nuances to how this will play out. But it was important for us, for really the whole XRP community, for them to know that the case is over. For all intents and purposes, the case is over. The SEC is no longer pursuing this. No investor harm. No investors lost any money. You're kind of like, wait, why are we here? And it really goes back to Gary Gensler fighting a fight that was about power grab. That was about overreach of the bureaucracy to try to take a new industry. That what we're seeing now happen in Washington is smart legislation will come forward. You're seeing that happen with stable coins in real time. And I think you'll have a market structure bill, is what it's described as, to provide clarity and rules for the SEC and CFTC.
Because there is a level of dilution for XRP when more supply is brought in on a regular basis.
So this is one of the things I'm glad you asked about, because there's frankly misinformation, sometimes disinformation, people spreading falsehoods out there. The amount of XRP that was created in 2012 when it was first started, that blockchain was first started, was 100 billion units. That can't be increased. It's slightly deflationary, and now there's about 99.9 billion units. Ripple owns about 42% of that supply. We have had, and for, 8 years, we published something called the XRP Markets Report, where we share how much we are introducing into the market, because we want that to be predictable. And that has been the case for many years now. And so we will continue to make sure that's very predictable. At some point, maybe we won't be selling as much. We'll see how that plays out in the future. But right now, frankly, we get criticized for owning too much, and then we're criticized for selling some. But we want to do that in a constructive way, which is what we've done for years.
And we have the SEC case finally over with Ripple. But Ripple's case is not over. Ripple has not dropped their case because they want that $125 million back. But it's still no clarity when it comes to the institutions. And then, of course, regulation is definitely coming. And again, that's the reason why Ripple created its own stablecoin. Stablecoin regulation is going to come first. And then we're going to see those wallets attached to the bank account. And we'll have the sheep using crypto without even knowing. And remember, the crypto teacher told you. And there was a lot of news yesterday that's not going to hit the mainstream because nobody cares. But believe me, It's going to affect you big time. And one of them is China is moving those cheap goods inside the emerging markets due to tariffs. So what do you think is going to happen inside the United States? We're going to start seeing our goods shrink, and then on top of it, prices are going to keep moving higher. They're moving the cheap goods in the emerging markets. And who's going to rise in the fourth industrial revolution first? That's right, the emerging markets. And China knows that. Right now, you can't see it. But once they flip that switch, we're going to start seeing the emerging markets, the poverty, move from poverty to the middle class. And remember, the crypto teacher told you. And we had Fed Jerome Powell in the House yesterday. Says that yes, they're going to allow the tariffs to be applied before they react, because it's going to be transitory. It's going to be temporary. And we know that is not correct. Again, we're going to start seeing prices move higher. And then on top of it, again, you got to match up with China moving those cheap goods to the emerging markets. No longer sending a lot of them inside the United States. And that's going to shrink the supply chain. And remember, the crypto teacher told you. And remember, your life is an illusion and TV is your reality. In order to bring in all this technology, you have to sell it. And I was waiting on this. And what did he say? Instead of you sending your kids going to war, send the robots. And we know who funds both sides. Airplanes with no pilot is the present technology. It's already here. You heard it out of his mouth. And we know every time we hear the drums are beaten, it's to move us over to another agenda. And that agenda is going to be the fourth industrial revolution. And remember, the crypto teacher told you. Because he knows when it comes to the NWO, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
And before, we're really used to describing the China shock as something more specific to the U.S., describing the economic damage and job loss from this flood of Chinese imports, kind of back when China first joined the global trading system and the WTO. But today, we're seeing it much more broadly across the world. We're seeing it in Mexico, in Brazil, in places like Indonesia, like you just mentioned, and across Southeast Asia. So basically emerging market economies, which really rely on their manufacturing sectors for growth, both domestically and trying to export those goods for their economic growth, are facing a lot more competition from China. And the reason behind that, you may ask, is Trump's tariffs, President Trump's tariffs, as well as the reciprocal tariffs that are set to come in. So once China realized they could no longer export to the U.S. as easily, there was this big reshuffling of supply chains, and there was also a big gap in where they had to send their goods to. And so that's why we're seeing a lot more of those goods flowing to other countries.
I also think that he was pretty clear that the Fed would not react to the tariffs if they brought about price rises, which he thought would be temporary. And that was something I was definitely looking for. I was wondering, would he go against those tariffs or not? He seemed to imply that he would not go against those tariffs unless it sort of caught on to inflationary expectations or went into some other areas. And I think that the market really probably took some comfort in that statement.
AI and autonomous systems, so an airplane without a pilot, a submarine without a driver. This is the present of warfare. It's not the future. And it's not the phenomenon that we're familiar with from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, where there was a pilot, they were just remotely operating the drone via satellite link. These are actually autonomous. They are making decisions about how to avoid obstacles, how to avoid countermeasures and defensive weapons, and how to actually select and engage targets. And that is the future of warfare as agreed to by the military leadership of the United States, of China, of Russia. Everybody is moving in this direction. And imagine, if you are the president of the United States, are you really going to ask some mother and father to send their child into warfare when there's an alternative of a robotic ecosystem that can actually have superior performance?
Going to a different economy. And we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
And so we'll import Chinese-based CBDC technology. So it's going to be CBDC in a box provided to you by the People's Bank of China.
But every stock, every bond, every currency, every commodity, every piece of art, every private business, every piece of real estate will eventually be a token on a blockchain, an entry on a ledger, permanent and immutable. We will have truth instead of trust, and we will save over $7 trillion a year. 6 to 8% of global GDP is wasted by the friction of the trust industry that's necessary when you have dual entry accounting. With triple entry accounting, which is what a blockchain is, we get rid of all of that friction. It's a beautiful future.
Like what you see in China and their social credit scoring systems, right? If we get identity wrong, it could be a tool to enslave humanity. And if we get it right, it could be a tool to liberate humanity. And as an American, I'm obviously rooting for the one that's on the side of freedom.
Bitcoin is an international asset. And also, I do believe the role of crypto is it's digitizing gold.
I actually believe this technology is going to be very important. Look at it. We have been part of a huge revolution in investing through ETFs. We believe that ETFs will be changing the whole way we invest. Many people still use it as a means, people are investing it for indexing. No, the majority of people who are putting money in in ETFs are active investors that are buying exposure. The entire bond market is being transformed as we talk right now. I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. And if we could have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement. And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem.
Chinese bank ICBC has been hit by a ransomware attack, and the U.S. Treasury market, as a result of that, has been disrupted. This, according to the Financial Times. We're getting at more right now with Bloomberg's Shonali Bassick. Shonali, what do we know?
Listen, we have the Financial Times now reporting that ICBC, one of China's largest banks here, was hit with a ransomware attack. And remember, they're a very significant intermediary in the Treasury market. The SIFMA has told its members that this has been part of the reason here that the system is kind of clogged up, if you will, during that auction that we saw a little bit before. The attack had prevented ICBC, according to the Financial Times, from settling Treasury trades on behalf of other market participants. A large executive at a major bank also telling the paper that such a large party on the fixed income clearing corp creates major concerns, potentially impacting the liquidity of Treasury markets.
Now, it was not just a poor auction. It was absolutely lousy, and when the dealers have to step in to save a treasury auction, that's a rare occurrence. And
Cryptoteacher and the new World Order book, plus the 3 kids books. It's time to re-educate. Also, if new to cryptos, Coinbase, Bitrue, Binance. Do not forget book links and crypto links are in the description. The stock channel, guys. Don't forget to go like, subscribe, spread everywhere. You have your Kobo, your chip stocks, your banking, your gaming. While everybody's sitting at home, get on stocks, the Xrp, the biotech stocks. And while everybody's at home wishing, they were still getting that free money. What are they doing? Drinking and smoking weed. Don't forget about those stocks, and you have a wonderful day. The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids books. You know, I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York from COVID Stories 3. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.